welcome everyone to our school board meeting tonight. Thank you all for coming. We will begin tonight with our call. Well, I'm doing the call of order, then our reverence by Steve Carlson, our superintendent, flag salute, pledge of allegiance, Connie Archibald, board member, and then we'll go from there.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful tonight that we could come together as representatives of the Box Elder School District with the Board of Education and staff. And we're grateful for the many opportunities we have of living in this wonderful nation and this wonderful state. And we're very grateful for being able to live in the northern half of the state and the beauty and the great things that can happen up here. And Father, we're grateful that we're allowed to work in this great profession and be part of the decisions that help lead and guide the direction that will affect thousands and thousands of young people's lives, and very hopefully for the betterment. So thank you very much, Father, for allowing us to have these great opportunities. We ask you tonight that we'd be able to do the work of the people in open meeting and be able to explain things and be able to understand the things that are best for the students of this great school district, and also keeping in mind always the employees and the patrons, the taxpayers. Father, we ask thee that we'll have peace and joy in tonight's meeting, and that we'll be able to have open discussions that at times might be a little bit concerning, however, stay full of happiness and joy. And Father, once again, thank you for all the great opportunities we have of being here, and we ask for these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Please stand, face the flag, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, in approving tonight's agenda, we need to make note that we've already completed our closed session at the end, so we're going to change the agenda
Motion that
just a
we
little bit.
change the agenda to delete item, or not delete, but we already did item J, so move that off the agenda. And with that, approve it with that change.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, so Karen Cronin has made the motion and Danielle Wright has made the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, our agenda is approved. Now we'll go on to our public comment. Now, it's a little different tonight because we're having not only a public comment, but we also have our truth and taxation hearing. Our truth and taxation hearing cannot start officially until 7:30 because that's what we have the time for it when everyone's to be here. So if you're here to do public comment, then we'll take that now. If you're here for truth and taxation, then we will need to wait until 7:30. So Bob, I know Bob. So Bob, are you here for truth and taxation? Okay, so I'm sorry, okay, so you may have to wait about 40 minutes. Is that okay? Okay, thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Well, Mr. President, could I give a public comment?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, just, I talked about Bridgerland's graduation, and Karen had asked for numbers, and so I was able to get those. And I just wanted to report that the Bridgerland Technical College, in the June graduation, graduated 178 high school students. They got certificates for completing their program. And that, so Bridgerland takes in Rich County, Cache, Logan, and Box Elder. And of the 178 students, 60 of them were Box Elder students that got full certificates for the programs they completed. So we're, working with 3 other school districts, we're kind of the big kahuna there in the graduation. So that is my report.
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us, Nancy. Any other comment from anyone? Okay. We will move along then to our information items. We switched things around a little bit tonight because we have the truth and taxation hearing at 7:30, so we're trying to get things done so that we'll just have our meeting at 7:30. Okay, so Jeremy Young is here, and Jeremy is our assessment director, and he is going to be our first presenter on the AP results. Thanks, Jeremy.
So these results, we always pick in the summer, so oftentimes, teachers are just barely seeing these, depending on, how aware they are in the summer of their email and things like that. You know, some teachers that I talked to had already dived back into them and looked at them. Most of them, in terms of actions regarding this data, it's still pretty early for that, where teachers are just barely starting to come back and schools will start to meet and have conversations about these results. So it's very preliminary that way. But as we look, we can get an idea of how things went this past year in terms of AP participation and passing classes or getting a score high enough to get credit that way. So overall, this past year, we had 535 tests taken, and with an average pass rate of 66%. On our next slide, we'll kind of give you a little historical data there. So over time, so this is exams and students. So we were a little bit down this year with exams from the previous year, still a lot higher than we have been. Some of that is attributed to our dual immersion programs. As those programs are reaching 9th grade, we add a cohort of ideally 60 students. Usually it's anywhere from 30 to 40 is kind of typical. And then the same with students. We see, we're up with students taking AP classes, or at least the test. Even if they take the AP class, that doesn't always ensure that they take the test. And so these are just test results that we see. But over the last 5 years, we're trending up, which is a positive thing. Which is actually surprising to me as I talk to high school principals. They see more interest in concurrent enrollment classes, just because it's, not that it's easier, but it's almost less chance of not receiving credit with concurrent enrollment as you are passing a class as opposed to passing a test to get credit for the coursework. Yeah.
So as a mom who's dealt with both of these, it is, you can't register for college until you get your APs, and they don't come till August. But if you've got your concurrent, you can register for college right out of the chutes.
Yeah.
And I really encourage my kids to do AP, but concurrent's so much cleaner.
We see a lot, some courses are only offered to seniors. Some AP courses, calculus, depending on where you're at, and things is more of a senior class. But you see a lot more of students who are willing to take AP through their junior year and switch over to concurrent enrollment for their senior year for that sort of a reason. Because they're not waiting on the summer AP results to come in to know where they're at that way.
Jeremy, when was the first cohort of DLI? Like when we start, because we went from 2021 to 2022, like increased by 100. Was that the DLI timeframe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of that we see, and granted, that takes place incrementally, and so we had 1 year with just Spanish on the south end, and then the next year we added Chinese, and then the next year I believe we added Spanish on the north end. And so we don't have, I think we're still a couple years before we get the 3 Mile Willard area, that group to come through, and then North Park obviously is just still like 3rd grade. And so they're a ways out from hitting that 9th grade AP test. Here's passing percentages over time as well. So you can see a dip in 2020, and then we've kind of bounced back in the last 2 years. We've been pretty consistently 66% for our pass rate of tests. And then scores by exam. So I've included the number of tests taken for each exam, pointing out these percentages. I sorted so that
the table is all of the tests taken, and then these percentages that are highlighted are just ninth grade students, so it's just our DLI numbers. So for DLI Chinese this year, it was 41%. Our Utah this year was 48%. That's a pretty marked decrease from previous years. The last 2 years, it's been about 90 for our Chinese, which I met with the middle school administrators and our middle school Chinese DLI teacher to talk about why and what, and really that percentage is probably most reflective of more students taking the test. And so, she said in the previous 2 years, she's seen a lot more of students by the time she came into her class drop the program, and so not take the test. And so whether you call that an artificial inflation of a percentage or not, she just had more students recognize, I'm not going to pass this, I'm going to be done now. And so there was, some of that conversation about keeping parents informed throughout the process and making informed decisions that way. But that's kind of reflective of that. And then the other one that's highlighted is our Spanish language and culture. So we had 82%, which is up from last year and previous years, and with a state percentage of 73 for ninth grade students. So that looks really good. Yeah.
In our Spanish, do we see a lot of Spanish speakers taking dual immersion, or if they're already speaking Spanish, do they not even bother?
Some, we try to encourage it, especially ESL students, because there's great research data that shows the effectiveness of students being successful learning English and their heritage language if they're in a DLI program. And so we encourage that in the lottery that we hold. If it's your native language, you get 2, similar to if you have a sibling in the program. So as a way to kind of encourage that. Also, it allows, if we have move-in ESL students that move in speaking that language and we have space in the program, we can add them in if there's interest there. We're getting more and more.
Okay, that brought up another question. You used the word lottery. How many students did not get the lottery?
In the lottery this year? So the lottery that we held in January, the only school that we had to hold a lottery for was Lakeview. And I think we ended up with maybe 15 students that didn't get in. Some of those took open spots in other schools. Some chose to go to, I don't know that we had anybody who wanted that one that went north, but we did have some that wanted Lakeview that took open positions at Willard. Not everybody, so there's still, I think, about 10 on the wait list for Lakeview. We've added a few in there, but there are still some on that wait list. Yeah, and some who have siblings in the program, which is tricky.
Explain the wait list. If they join by the second grade, do we let them in then? Is that
Halfway through first grade.
halfway through? That's as far as we go. Okay.
Yeah, so with the wait list, the experience with the state has been that if an opening opens up by the Christmas break before that time, then a student can come in and still kind of catch up. But really after halfway through that first grade, it's they're kind of behind and lost, and so that's their recommended. We can transfer programs, and you can transfer into an open spot from a program, but really the wait list for a brand new student in DLI really goes through the first of the year, first grade.
Are there exceptions for if like a third grader native speaker moved in? Would they be able to join in third grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we do that if there's open spots, like ESL students that have Spanish or Chinese as a heritage language. If they move in and there's an open spot, then and we'll even do that for out of bounds students if they want to attend a school that has that language DLI. So like, for example, last year we had, towards the end of the year, we had a student move in from Chile who was in 5th grade. And they were supposed to go to Golden Spike, and in talking with them and letting them know about the dual immersion program, they opted to provide transportation to their student to go to Lakeview and be enrolled in a dual immersion Spanish class, because then half of their day is speaking a language they understand. They have an instant connection with teachers that speak their language. Their parents can communicate with those teachers. It's better from a social emotional standpoint for those students to ease their transition in, and it's still teaching the language, and so they're still learning. But it's good. It's a good thing when we have the open spots. The last two slides that I put on about AP scores are a breakdown of AP scores by race and ethnicity with pass rates. The percentages are kind of tricky because our numbers are so low. One, we don't have high populations of those outside of maybe Hispanic students. We have probably a high enough demographic or percentage or number of students within our district to have that be relatively representative as a percentage with pass rates. And so we can see that that's behind. We are seeing an increase in Hispanic students taking AP tests compared to previous years, which is a positive thing. And then we'll continue to work on pass rates, but you can kind of see from the numbers, just our other races or ethnicities are pretty low.
I know in some of the things and reports we do, there has to be a certain cohort of students of that ethnicity or race. This doesn't
Yes.
need that.
No, so this is all
This
just
is just
raw
us.
data.
This is just us.
This is all just raw data. So AP is not tied to accountability. So for state accountability rules, you have to have an N size of 10 to have it count towards your accountability and school grading, that sort of stuff. And so you'll see those on those reports if you go into the data gateway or things with an N less than 10 number. But these are just for us to know. And then the last page is just a bar graph over time, over the past 5 years of pass percentages by race and ethnicity, just to kind of get, again, probably the only ones that have a number, a student number behind it, enough to kind of draw conclusions are the percentages of white students and Hispanic students. Our others, the number of students are so small that the percentages really can fluctuate. Yeah, which is that one student that took the test and passed it, and so, yeah. And the others, those zeros are probably one student that took the test and didn't pass it, and so it's those sorts of things with percentages, but you can kind of get an idea of, a fairly flat as far as Hispanic passing percentages, a slight increase with white students. And those white percentages pretty much mirror our district percentages that we had earlier, because that makes up the majority of our students that are taking AP classes.
Can I ask a question? What is the percentage, or maybe you don't have it, but of the students who take the AP class, how many take the test?
Usually,
It might depend on the class,
yeah,
but
it does depend on the class, but probably 85 to 90% of the students
Okay.
that take the class take the test. That'll fluctuate a little bit class by class, but in general, the vast majority of them do. Yeah. Any other questions about AP, these AP results? So like I said, teachers and schools now have these, and we'll start to dive into, what does this mean for our program? Really digging into the data in terms of identifying the students who did better or worse than they thought, and what does that mean for their instruction, and how can they adjust that to do better?
I was going to say, what are the high school, and not this year, obviously, we don't know, but in the past, how have they used these scores? Is it just more on an instruction type of thing, or are they looking at programs in general?
Generally, instructionally, our AP or our DLI teachers will gather together, usually at more the secondary level, and talk about pass rates and talk about preparedness and things, specific things that they can do throughout the course of DLI. Outside of that, it really is usually addressed teacher by teacher, or maybe even department by department at the schools, to look at, all right, this is my pass rate. Does that reflect, what can I do to maybe help better prepare these students to pass it? What can I adjust, personally? A great example of that would be our AP scores at Bear River Middle School for DLI Spanish. Last year's pass rate was like 45%, and this year was, I would say 78, almost 80%. And so a really big difference, and it's because that teacher attended an AP Institute to learn better how to better prepare their students to pass the test, and knowing what's going to be on it, and knowing how the questions are going to be asked, those sorts of things really made an impact in that case. And so those sorts of things are what they do.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, Jeremy, lucky you. You get to
Here
do
I
the
am
next
again.
part. Assessment and accountability report.
Okay, so this report comes about, is in future years. I plan to provide this to the board in June. It was something that I had noticed other districts doing. Essentially, some of this data you've received throughout the year already, and I've reported on. But primarily, the idea is to give you an overall view of what assessment looked like and happened last year. And so in future years, I'll provide this to you in the June board meeting so that you have that information. And so this is the first time our district's ever created one of these, and put all of this in one place for you. And so you likely were able to review it beforehand. I won't spend a lot of time going over all the things, just kind of some brief overviews, and then if you have specific questions about any of them individually, the pages or tests. One thing to remember with getting this data this early, kind of, Nancy kind of mentioned it, but so the state, all of these assessments are state assessments outside of MAP, and that's just a district one that we do for our own information. But with the state assessments, accountability rules are applied usually by October, which means they'll remove things like students that weren't with us for 160 days of the year. They'll pull their scores out so that they don't count for or against us because they didn't receive enough of our instruction, type of a thing. And so this data is all raw data. Graduation rates are similar because we have graduation is, we have students completing summer school and passing things off and getting credit all the way through the end of the summer. And so those things can change a little bit too. There's a little bit of fluctuation, but we felt that it's better to get this information closer to the end of the school year as opposed to waiting in till we're well into the next school year and they, oh, okay, that's good to know, but we're on this year. That's kind of the thought behind it. And so you'll notice a little asterisk on a line of text on many of the pages that says that. So early literacy, this is Acadiance reading, also known as DIBELS, or formerly known as DIBELS. And so you've got, if you're familiar with it, so Our at or above is combined. You know, if you're in the elementary schools, those are green and blue scores that are combined for that. And so just a snapshot of where, by the end of the year, these are end-of-year results, where they're at, and then 3-year trends for those grades below. You see for everywhere but 5th grade was trending upwards. Not really sure why on that 5th grade was a little bit lower, but most of the efforts and resources for this level of reading are put at K3 with our early literacy programs and goals and efforts. We include 4th and 5th, but that's where the majority of that work is to get students reading at grade level by 3rd grade. Then the next page is growth, is that same measure, but just with growth. And so we measure growth using what's called pathways of progress. And we want students to be in a typical or higher. The goal from the state is that we have 60% of our students at typical or higher. And so you can see we're above 60 in all of those, specifically 3rd grade, where we've got 84% of our students are there, which is really outstanding. The 3rd grade has really been doing well. And then that same data with a 3-year trend below that as well. At the bottom of the page is our district goals, that the state has a formula that we follow to set those goals. We had one in 1st grade and one in 2nd grade. We met our 1st grade goal and didn't meet our 2nd grade goal. And so we'll continue to work on that. That's an ongoing thing that we set those goals in the summer and with following a state program, and then strive to meet them throughout the year. The next one is early numeracy. This is Acadians math. We've been doing this for 2 years in grades 1 through 3. You can see your first bar graphs there are the same type of thing. Below, well below, and at or above are combined. We're at 75 or around there is kind of our general percentage for that throughout the district. And then the 2-year trend for each grade, we're increasing, which is the longer we have the tool and the more our teachers are familiar with it and how to prepare students to have it reflect what they're learning in class, the better we're going to do that way. Our district math goal was to increase beginning to end by 15% in 1st grade, and we went up 26, which is really fantastic. That picked up a lot of kids who had started below grade level and ended above or at grade level. RISE assessment results. So again, this is one of those that's raw data. So if you go into the data gateway and look at previous years, it's not wholly comparable, and that's why you'll notice a dip for this year in all of our percentages. Those I imagine will go up as we have transient students or students that were only here for part of the year or the end of the year, but took the test with us. Their scores are included on our 2023 data right now. And then in October, they'll be pulled out, and we'll get, when I present on school grading, you'll have updated scores for those. And it's broken down by grade level for ELA, math, and science there, so you can kind of see where it is in each grade. You'll notice a drop off in 6th grade, pretty much in all of our subject areas. That is typical statewide. It's not unique to us, and with our initially I thought it might be reflective of our students moving from elementary school to the intermediate school and how that might affect them in terms of I'm with one teacher all day as opposed to moving classes and things like that. But I find that that's less so because it's pretty reflective of the whole state, and I think more it's just the test itself is more difficult. Science is kind of the same way. I think the science goes up in 6th grade for us, specifically because students have a set science class that they take in 6th grade as one of their periods, as opposed to when your fifth grade teacher is going to work it in as part of their day. So I think that's reflected in the sixth grade there. Oh, Salah. Here it is broken out by school, so you can kind of look and see some of our, our lowest in general are our Title I schools. So we see a definite reflection of socioeconomic status impacting achievement.
So
a couple of-
Jeremy, I had a question on this. So our intermediate schools, Harris did better, but then they got to Bear River Middle and they tanked. Young did worse, but they got, that made no sense.
Doesn't make sense to me either.
Okay.
Honestly, I think it is more reflective of a school or a department's focus on the RISE assessment as opposed to just teaching standards in general. And so I think those schools that are focused on RISE and preparing students to pass their RISE specifically are going to have higher scores here. The schools that I went to last year that had like the teams, for example, Box Elder Middle School's math, their 8th grade math team has had me come out and do trainings on RISE and using RISE benchmarks, and they're really focused on making sure that the way that they're teaching their students is going to be transfer over into how well they perform on the assessment, and that's not something that that every school or every team has me do or focuses on in general. Yeah, there's that disparity is interesting.
Because both of them just flipped.
Yeah. Yeah. Utah Aspire Plus results. This is our 9th and 10th grade students that take Utah Aspire Plus, ELA Math and Science. You can kind of see in general where we've been, where we are this year, and where we've been in the past 3 years. This is also pretty consistent with state numbers, state data. I've reached out to those schools, asked when I saw these 3-year trend numbers, and really the feedback I get from them is they're seeing less and less students motivated to do well or even take this assessment, which in years past we've been able to kind of motivate them with the ACT predictive piece of it. But with the ACT being less emphasized by universities for acceptance outside of scholarships, you don't need an ACT score to get into college. And so we see fewer and fewer students desiring that and it being motivating. And so we've had conversations with schools and administrators about ways to incentivize or motivate students. But really, it has to be academic. But the hard thing about using the Utah Aspire Plus as an academic incentive is only half of the questions are tied to Utah standards, and the other half are ACT based, essentially. And so it's tricky to say, what does this grade mean in terms of standards for our class? You know, to say, oh, if you get this on science, if you pass the science, then you get an A, or doesn't really reflect because they're different and we can't.
So,
just the test.
yeah, so being that, is there a talk, I mean, statewide, or like, I know this is like an accountability test that we have.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Are they going to change that? Like if the ACT is no longer required and so these really aren't predictive of what they're learning, like is that
I have
happening?
not heard any talk that way, although there are a number of assessment directors throughout the state that aren't real excited about what's happening with this currently. I haven't heard any indication from the state office or those
Okay.
that work there that it will be replaced with something else.
Okay, I was just wondering, because if it's not good data if it doesn't help us do better. And so if we're not using it appropriately, then, I mean, if there's a better tool,
Right.
I was just wondering if they're pursuing that, so.
What, if I might interject, I've, been in this role a long time, and when we had the SAGE tests, it went up to the 10th grade.
11th grade.
11th grade, thank you. And it's interesting, when No Child Left Behind came about, there was a real distaste for it, I'll just say it, and all the testing and the accountability. But then, as I felt like the state and everybody really stepped up and worked and really focused on those groups that were lower, we started seeing some real progress. Well, the time came that the SAGE had kind of ran its course and the state needed to go out to bid to another test. And at that time, I was part of the discussions, you know, just being a superintendent in the state, but they chose at that time to do away with 11th and the 10th and the 9th grade. And quite frankly, it was a little disheartening. Now, I think some of it was based on the fact that it was really hurting some school districts, especially those school districts that have a lot more, I'll just say it, minorities than we do. And that's the only thing I can think of that's why it happened. And so when they came up with this Aspire Plus, it is just kind of I think of it as a practice a little bit to kind of get used to taking the ACT test. And it's not really a lot, but it is a little predictive, but I think it gives them that help. And so it's one of those things that I think the state personally took a step back on because we were showing great progress in Box Elder School District and always improving in our growth and our proficiency levels. And so I really don't know why, even though I was part of the discussion, why the powers chose to do away with those 3 grades.
And we've even tried to find, you know, to test the accuracy of the Aspire Plus test in predicting. So when this past year, when 11th grade students took the ACT, we took that data and compared it against their Utah Aspire Plus data that they took as 10th graders and their predictive score to see how well it correlated. So it said, you're going to get a score within this range, and did it. And for us, for the past 2 years, it was about 68% of the students scored within the range predicted, either above or below, either way. And so, not super, not the data we were looking for in terms of, hey, here is, this will let you know what you got, and for good or bad. Here it is broken down, the same data broken down by grades and then by schools underneath. Again, this is our 9th graders and our 10th graders taking this, and then Sunrise, there's your numbers less than 10 that you were looking for with students taking it, and so the report we get back from them. Our next slide is ACT. I presented on this after we took the ACT, so this is data that you've seen before. I've included whole state comparisons here and a breakdown by school, so you can kind of see those in a table trend, or in a table fashion, and then 3-year trend beneath that. Same type of thing, we're seeing fewer and fewer students take the ACT. We see them they just don't come that day and don't take it. It's not necessarily an opt-out thing. They just don't come to school on test day, and they don't come into.
Is it not true, too, that colleges don't require the ACT test score like they used to?
Not for admissions.
Not for admissions.
Yeah. It's still pretty much universally required for scholarships. But for general admissions into universities, for all of Utah's current colleges and universities, you don't need an ACT score to be admitted.
Well, and interestingly, I mean, I've got a senior this year, and so I've been looking at colleges, and you know, like the scholarship index, a lot of them are saying you need this on your ACT or a GPA or an SAT, like they take the whatever it is, and even in scholarship reviews, I mean, I think if you have an ACT, it helps, but it's not even a requirement in some now.
Right. Yep. Here's our preliminary graduation rates is at 93% as a district. Probably the greatest celebration on there is Sunrise High School at 69%, which is fantastic growth, and I think you see that on the next slide. But Principal Jackman has really done some great work over there in trying to help students graduate. And so graduation rates overall are really improving throughout the district. This last slide is MAP growth. So last year was our first full year taking MAP growth. MAP is a test that is based on Common Core standards that is created by NWEA. Many states use this as their state assessment. For us, we decided to adopt it because we wanted something that is a little more, that has more diagnostic information for teachers to use than what we were getting with the ACT and Aspire Plus. And so teachers will use this. What the test does is identifies what's called a zone of proximal learning, which kind of tells which standard each student is ready to learn. And so teachers can give the assessment. We give it at the beginning, middle, and end of each year. And they can look at that data to say, all right, this is where all the students in my class, this is where they're at on this particular standard. And they can automatically have data that will guide scaffolding and differentiation and help them planning that way. These growth percentiles are where it's a median growth percentile. So each student gets a growth percentile based on where they started and where they ended, about where compared to 100 other students throughout the nation that started where they ended or started where they did. And then there's a median number for each school, and that's what these are. You'll notice Harris is probably the top of both of those, and I think it's mainly because they figured it out. Like for them, they figured out a system for both proctoring and using the information, motivating students to take it, all of those things that worked for their school. Those are still bugs that we're trying to work out as students, parents, and teachers understand what this is, what it can do, and it takes a little bit of work with a brand new assessment system. It's not a state assessment system, it's just something that our district does in Utah, and so we are trying to make it work for us, but give us that data that we're not getting from the state assessments.
So Jeremy, are they taking 3 different tests? The
They take
Aspire, this, and the ACT to get all 3 different data points?
No, so
Or does this come off of a different test that, I mean?
So so the Aspire is just 9th and 10th graders, and the ACT is 11th graders, and we do 6th through 11th take this. There's a math, a reading, and this year Harris is actually piloting science that they take 3 times a year. And so they'll take it the first of the year. Each school proctors it a little bit differently, but some take it all in a day, some take it in their core classes with their teacher, some do it on like a late start schedule, and they just start testing their first hour and then they go to the rest of their classes type of a thing. And so the logistics of how it's administered looks a little bit different. And there's a back and forth of how much instructional time do I sacrifice to give this assessment, and that value, the value of lost instructional time versus the information I get from the assessment, and where's that sweet spot of that. But this is in addition to either the ACT or RISE. So our 6th through 8th graders will take RISE at the end of the year, but they also take MAPS 3 times a year.
Okay, this is a really random question. Maybe you don't know. How is this test? And I just know math because I had a 7th grader and she was telling me the problems, and they were nowhere anything what they were learning in the class. It was like.
Yeah, so this whole.
So how does that, like, how does it work?
So it's computer adaptive, similar to RISE, but it's not based on the RISE. It's not based on the grade level standards. And so if you take all of the math standards and put them in a continuum from 6th grade to 12th grade, and a student's going to test. If they get it right, they're going to be bumped up. And if they get it wrong, it's bumped down. And so likely if she was doing stuff that she has never learned before, it's because she was answering correctly all the stuff that she has learned before. And so she was up in that range of stuff that I haven't been taught yet, and that's why it's.
So how does
it's
that help the
it's not an
teacher?
assessment
That's
of mastery, because
Yeah.
it tells them what they're ready to learn. So
Okay.
it's that zone of proximal learning really identifies a student is ready to learn this concept at this level.
Okay.
And that's the information that you get.
Whether they
It's
can do it
a
or
mastery
not.
test, right. It's not a test of mastery.
Right.
It's a.
Ready to learn that.
It identifies what they're ready to learn.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
Yeah. And from that aspect, it's a much better indicator of for teachers of where to teach and where to go than it is a measurement of learning that's taken place. And so it's more just this is for your information is why I included it, but it's not necessarily a measurement of what's happening regarding learning in those, RISE is going to be a better end of level test than this will. Okay,
Okay, any other questions for Jeremy?
sorry, I probably took more than my time. but
Okay,
got
thank you,
close to
Jeremy.
7.
Appreciate all your hard work on that. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to go into our bus routes and runs, and Marcy Summers, our route coordinator, is here. So Marcy, would you like to come up? Thank you for coming.
If Jason's out of town or he would be here.
Okay.
He's at the Taylor Swift concert right now in
Oh,
California.
wow.
Yes, he does have 3 girls. They even made him a shirt. I think he said the shirt said Swifty Dad or something. So
Is he in the concert or is he one sitting outside?
he's in the concert. He tried to get his girls to let him sell his tickets because he's like, I can make lots of money off of that, but they wouldn't let him, so.
This is now all on public record.
Okay, so we just kind of wanted to go through our routes and how we went about doing the double routing and all that information. Some of the things that we went by to figure these was we wanted to reduce the amount of students on a bus and reduce the length of time that each student was on the bus. Some of the logistics that we were looking at as we did them was where their route is at, like where a route is at. Say a secondary route is in Corinne, we wanted their elementary route to be in that same proximity. So they're going to the same area twice, so it wasn't, wasted. So they know that area and they would be going to the same area twice. So most of the routes are pretty much the same for secondary and elementary. There was some areas that I couldn't work that out, so it's close, but it's in the same area, so. Another thing we had to take into consideration was seniority, because our route, we go by seniority in our department, so. And another thing that threw a wrench into it was losing kindergarten. So losing kindergarten, our drivers that drove kindergarten routes had more seniority. So we kind of had to take that into account and try to make up those hours for them, so. So like, they don't necessarily get to pick their routes, but like if a route opens and they want to put in for it, it goes by seniority. So whoever's been there longest kind of has seniority over that. So if they have a kindergarten route, they've obviously put in for it and because they've been there longer than, does that make sense?
You're meaning they have more hours because they had a PM kindergarten route? Is
Like,
that-
or more years. Seniority goes by the years from when they started,
Yeah, okay.
so,
Marcy, can I explain that a little bit?
yes.
So basically what happens is the route becomes available and people apply for that route. The route gets awarded to the person that has the most seniority.
It just gives them more hours. Huh? So it gives them more hours.
Okay, okay,
So
We had a morning route and after route, noon route plus a noon route, right?
Yes.
okay, okay, there you go. I just thought they thought those kindergartners are so dang cute. I'm like, so, that's why I bought it.
So are we doing any midday kindergarten busing, or is everybody already?
We don't have any midday kindergarten busing right now. So we asked our drivers whether they wanted to double route or not, and we only had a handful that didn't. So those that didn't want to double route, we just left their route like it was. But there was only 7 or 8 that didn't want to, so it worked out really good. I have an example of some of the routes that we split up. So on the left is the previous route. So those kids were on the bus for Yes. Some of those kids, and this is a route that we had lots of complaints on, and obviously because the kids were on there so long. So this is a route out in Corinne. So we took and we divided that into two, and it reduced that time considerably. And on that first route, the amount of kids on that route before it was split, there were 74 kids on that route. And now there's 32 or 38 on the one and 32 on the other one. So it will help the drivers too to be able to manage the kids and even get to know them better. Our drivers are actually excited about that because they'll be able to get to know the students better and it'll be more personable. So that's one of ours, and I have a map of it also on the next one. So it shows the one on the left are the stops that it was previously, and then the two on the right are the new stops. So there's a lot less driving time for those kids. I have an example of another one. This other one's in Fielding. So the amount of kids on it was 70 kids when we started, and they were on the bus for. Yeah. So, and then we divided that. So what that is that bus was going to Beaver Dam, and they were going Collingston area. So we split that. So the one bus is just going Beaver Dam, and the other one's just going in the Collingston area. So those kids will be on the bus a lot less time. There was a lot more dividing up of routes in Fielding just because of the area they cover. So we added probably more buses to Fielding Elementary than any of the other elementaries just because of the area that they have to cover. So after we did all this, the average on each bus for secondary and elementary is about 40 to 45 kids on each bus. So, and the time on it, most of them are around 40 minutes at the most. That one is probably our longest one that we still have, and it's just because it's so much area out in Corinne. So we handed out our routes to our drivers last week at in-service meetings, and they were excited about it, and so they're happy to be able to start this. And so another thing we were able to do with the double routing is we actually lost last week 3 drivers quit, and so over the summer there's been 10 route openings between drivers quitting and drivers getting different positions within transportation. So that was 10 open routes that we would have had to fill. I was able to absorb 5 of those routes. So that's been nice too. And another thing that's going to be good with this is we'll be able to, as the community grows, that growth, we'll be able to absorb that better because the buses are not near as full as they were. So I think it's been a good thing, and we appreciate your help with all of it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Marcy. Thank you.
I was just going to mention that you've had to reroute every route, and that's probably been a monumental task, so thank you for that, because you didn't create that problem. We did, and so we appreciate you doing that. But yeah, I think you'll find out, if you look at the kids are getting home at the same time, yet they're getting out of school almost an hour later, but they're getting home at the same time they were when they were getting out of school an hour earlier. So this will be really beneficial for the students.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you so much. Okay, are there any board committee reports? We're good there? Oh, okay, but we're kind of working things around a little bit, okay? Because I'm trying to get, we're going to start truth and taxation.
I just have a
7:30.
question. When is the student, or do we know the student board member? Do they start next month? Have we got that?
Yes, I know, I heard who it was, and it's a really good pick, but I asked Marcy today, and she couldn't remember either, but they should start next month, yes. And it's Bear Box Elder this year. Yes, thank you.
Heidi, oh, I'm
No,
sorry, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, the security and safety committees met twice in the last month.
Yeah.
And got some really good things going forward. I wasn't able to attend the high school's exercise yesterday, or Monday, but I heard it was good, and
hopefully I'll
You
get to go to
missed
Bear
an
Rivers.
amazing display. It was great to see. And I am so proud of our law enforcement people that are stepping up to take care of things, and it's really cool.
Okay, super. That is great. Okay, thank you all on those board committee reports. We're going to go into our Truth and Taxation hearing now because it's 7:30. And then we will come back to Dave, and then we'll come to, I understand, Heidi Jo, you're going to do Ashley's part tonight, right? Okay, so we'll do those after our Truth and Taxation hearing. So we need a motion and a second and a vote to go out of our regular board meeting into Truth and Taxation.
I'll move that we go out of our regular board meeting and go into truth and taxation meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, Nancy Kennedy has made the motion and Connie Archibald the second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are good. Keith is going to bring me the list. Okay, what we're going to do on truth and taxation, we're going to follow our regular guidelines that we do on our public comment that we do at the first of every meeting. And we ask that I will just call you up in the order that you're on the list here. And then after I get done with the names, if there's anybody else that wants to comment, then I will have you come up, and all you need to do is give us your name and where you live. Is that correct, Superintendent? Okay, your name and your address where you live. So anyway, but we will start, and we ask that if you're an individual here that you can talk for 3 minutes. If you're here with a group, you can talk up to 6 minutes, okay? So we will begin with Robert Breitenbeeker. Bob's been here the longest, and he was the first one signed up. So Bob, if you'd like to come up, and you can begin.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As a person who falls into that category of senior citizen on a fixed income, I, perhaps unlike others, come before the board tonight to speak in support of the proposed tax increase. We've all recently felt the pressures of increasing costs in our daily lives, and the school district has also felt those pressures. When prices rise for utilities, fuel, supplies, and equipment, the school district is no different from the rest of us in having to find a way to pay for those increased costs. The only difference being the local grocer doesn't have to ask for taxpayer approval for raising the price of a dozen eggs. When income does not increase commensurate with increased costs, the options are few. Oftentimes, those shortfalls are reflected in reduced programs and deferred maintenance. And those hard choices only result in costs increasing even further at a later time. Our young people are our future. Even though this tax increase would take money from my own pocket, I would hope that we are all willing to make that sacrifice to provide the education our children and grandchildren need and deserve.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, Deanna Hardy.
Okay, Deanna Hardy. On behalf of the Box Elder Committee of Liberty, we oppose your tax increase, which will be the 4th tax increase since 2015. Here's all the articles from that. In Article 1, Section 1, it states, all men have the inherent and inalienable right to enjoy and defend their lives and liberties, to acquire, possess, and protect property. Our money is our property, and we oppose you taking it. You do not have our consent. The Lord says, thou shalt not steal. Please stop stealing our money. Before public education began, children were taught at home. In 1642, the legislature of Massachusetts enacted the first public education law in the nation. It required all children to receive an education and be taught the principles of religion. In 1647, a law affirmed that a general education was necessary because it was the one chief project of that old deluder Satan to keep men from the knowledge of the scriptures. Satan wanted to keep people from being able to read, so they could not read the Bible. That education law became known as the Old Deluder Satan Act. Subsequent American literacy laws similarly stressed the importance of citizens knowing the scriptures. The teaching of reading and studying the scriptures was critical because illiterate citizens could not read and judge laws of the colony against the Bible. Civil leaders might pass evil laws without opposition from the people, which would allow the rise of both tyrannical and oppressive leaders and policies. In 1963, our government took out the reading of the Bible in our public schools. The old deluder Satan added again, stopping the reading of the scriptures. Since then, we have had a long train of abuses within our education system. Theft of our money, the moral decay and depravity of man, inflated price of education, the dumbing down of our education, failing to teach our true and correct history, failing to teach the science of government, adoption of Common Core in 2010, social emotional learning, or SEL, building of expensive school buildings, critical race theory, or CTR, the sexualizing of our children, LGBTQ influences, pornography in our school libraries, etc., etc. You should not force one citizen to pay for another citizen's education. If you choose to help provide education for another, then it is charity. You cannot have one foot in Babylon and one foot in Zion. You cannot serve two masters. The prophet Brigham Young taught, free schools by taxation is theft. Only those with same values should teach your children. Brigham Young further stated, I am opposed to free education as much as I am opposed to taking away property from one man and giving it to another. Would I encourage free schools by taxation? No. Remember, the pioneers were forced from city to city and state to state, and eventually had to literally flee the United States of America because there was no constitutional protection for them. Alex Tocqueville, learning what contributed to America's success, stated, every citizen is taught the doctrines and evidence of his religion, the history of his country, and the leading features of its constitution. The difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution was God. America depended upon God for his divine help and protection, while the French Revolution excluded God. It has been said, God, family, and country. But our founding father, Dr. Benjamin Rush, stated it should read, God, country, and family. Because if you lose control of your country, it will become the great enemy of your family. So you stay involved with your country to keep a climate where your family can prosper. You can see the attacks on our families. Government's insatiable greed for our money and property.
Ma'am,
Yes,
your time's up. Would you
Okay.
please wrap up?
I have the
Thank
rest here. The solutions are here. I'll give
Okay.
each one of you a paper so you can read it.
Okay.
But I do have the solutions, what we need to be doing. So I'll
Thank-
pass that. Is it okay if I pass that each one?
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna, thank you so much. Thank you, Deanna, thank you. Okay, next we have, I'm sorry, and I can't read everyone's writing, I apologize, that's my fault. I have Lorraine from Perry. Vernon, okay, thank you, Lorraine. Lorraine Vernon from Perry is next. Thank you. Hello.
I'm speaking from the heart. I'm a retired 72-year-old. I live on Social Security. Every time you want a raise, I don't get one. The biggest raise I got was last year, and Medicare took that. So was it a raise? No, I still had to pay for my Medicare, more out of my pocket. I think that the state of Utah has an inverted pyramid. I believe there is more administrative at the top and less money flowing down to our schools. We are the state, the fastest growing state in the United States. We have a 24% growth rate. And if you look around Brigham, Perry, and Willard, our growth is not cheap growth. All of the homes I see are expensive homes. And when I read the price in the newspaper of some of the existing houses in Brigham City and Perry that are for sale, I'm astonished. So I think that with the growth and the increase in the prices of our property taxes, the growth in the development, that you are getting more than you need. I'm not getting it. I'm paying it out. I'm paying it out in groceries. They've taxed my utilities. My gasoline tax is outrageous. I mean, I know we all have to learn to live in a budget, and I wish that you would all do the same. Maybe we need a Proposition 13. Maybe that's what I need to start looking at, is maybe changing the laws on how other older people are being taxed. My children weren't educated here, and I always believe that the older generation pays for the next generation to be educated. Well, I think my 32 years in Perry have more than educated enough students, and I'm tired of paying for the tax increases, especially when I sent my kids to private school, because I did not believe that my children were getting the education that they needed. I sat on a jury when my daughter was in the 9th grade, and the teacher of the year was a teacher that was giving an A to a student who was being held for murder on a murder trial, and he couldn't do any reading comprehension, and he couldn't spell, but yet he put a cover on his book that very same day, and he brought in extra newspaper clippings. I wonder how much of that is going on today. So I wish you would relook and reevaluate your increase. Thank you for letting me take the stand. Goodbye.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you. Okay, Russell Scott from Tree Mountain. Okay.
I agree with what Lorraine just said. My father also got a nice increase last year in his stipend, and it was a whole $2.87 a month. Shows right there that they're not getting what they deserve. But I'll start out my comments by saying, in the book, The Law, if anybody's read that by Frederick Bastian, he states that taxes are nothing but legalized plunder. The theft of people's times, talents, and monies for what other people want. With gasoline prices being high, food prices, electricity prices, natural gas, water, sewer, car insurance, home insurance, etc., all raising. Now we have more to add on to that by school taxes on an arbitrary assessment of what our homes are worth and our businesses. The raising of taxes on that unrealized assessment along with the tax increase is too much. I did receive a pay raise this year. That was nice at my work. But with all these increases and figuring my budget and with the utilities, taxes, and the optional living needs of food, to stay even on my household budget, I have to add an extra hour onto my overtime at work just to keep up. I've not figured in yet the 50% increase that Tree Mountain says that they desire. So I'm sure it's going to be more than just an extra hour a week. I could have saved $20 in fuel by not coming here, but my conscience would not have been clear to express my feelings about this tax increase. I drove here to say no to this tax increase. I honestly feel that the decision on this tax increase probably has already been made. Last time I was here, as soon as we got done with public comment, it wasn't 15 seconds after that when everybody said yes to the increase. They couldn't have cared less about what everybody said. I have voiced my opinion. All y'all were elected to represent the people, not friends, not families, and not pet projects that you wish to have done. This tax money is people's time away from their families, and it needs to be treated as such. But I still voice my opposition to this tax increase. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you. Okay, Jeff Dinsdale from Perry.
Thank you for letting me come and talk for a minute. First of all, before I start, I want to thank everybody that works in the school district for the impact that schools have had on me and my children. Life-changing things have happened in schools with my kids. So I'm grateful for that. So I'm not here to oppose that. My daughter teaches, several people in my family teach, so I understand that side of it. But just in general, I'm opposed to this increase, and the reason why. So I'm going to use my taxes as an example. If we use the year 2000 as a baseline, Box Elder School District taxes have increased 239% since that. My other problem is with asking for an increase, the Box Elder School District has naturally seen an unreal increase over the last 20 years because of growth. We've converted hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland into residential property land. That there generates this huge amount of taxes. Secondly, the state for the last 2 years has appropriated more money to schools than they ever have in history. So we're getting more money from them. So I guess, in short, I think we need to look at other things, because my biggest concern is when the economy collapses, and I predict it will, what are you going to do then when all that money disappears? That concerns me. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Doug Powell from Tree Mountain.
Well, I can't say too much because these people here, we the people, is muchly already said it all. You know, and that's just all facts that they've said. I've sat and listened, so I'd advise you ladies and gentlemen to take that in consideration very seriously. I thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to give public comment? That's all that I have on the list. Okay, if you would just come up and state your name, and then if we can have your address so we know where you live. That's all we ask, okay? And then
Ask questions, or is that not fair to you guys?
it's a public comment, so we just listen to your comments is what we do, okay?
So, right off the bat, I said, there's two things on here.
First
for
of
the
all,
school.
your name, please.
Oh, sorry,
And
Val
listen.
Bennett and Tree Mountain.
Okay. Val Bennett and Tree Mountain, okay.
So, there's two items for the school. What's the difference between this BE school district and the basic school levy on our property taxes? Does anyone know?
The basic school levy is assessed from the state. We have no control over it.
Okay.
It's in the state.
And what does that money go to?
It ends up going to schools across, and then there's an equalization formula, so that's part of that.
Okay. To this second to last guy's point, so since 2012 to this year, there's been 33% overall inflation. And according to my notes, and I went back and looked at all my statements from them, it's quite a bit higher. It's a 53% increase for the school district. So it's more than inflation. And I really would like to know why that is. And also, why don't these additional houses that we're getting in Brigham, Tremont, and everywhere else, why are they not covering the cost of additional funds needed for the school? And also, I see we're also paying a charter school levy on top of these other two. If you want to send your kid to a charter school, maybe you should pay for it, not me. I mean, I'm glad you have that freedom to do that, but it shouldn't come out of my pocket. And the last item, I think we should consider restructuring how this education is paid for. For instance, if you've got, let's say 4 kids is an average size family. Okay, that's fine. What if you want to have 6, 7, 8, 9 kids? You should be paying more for that, not me.
I'm not the one that decided you should have a bigger family. If you want a bigger family, that's fine, certainly your call. But to me, that's why a lot of these extra funds are needed, is because the ratio of taxpayers to kids in this state is way out of whack. And so the good people that are getting those huge child tax credits ought to be footing some of this bill, in my opinion. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Val. Appreciate that. Okay, anybody else would like to come? Okay, if you would just come up and state your name, first and last name, and where you live, that's all we ask, okay?
Stuart Murray, Elwood.
Okay, thank you, Stuart.
I've never been to one of these hearings, and I had hoped tonight to have some kind of a short presentation or overview of the budget and kind of where things go. I can see that I was not prepared in that stance because I hadn't done my homework. I personally believe that an educated populace is a definite benefit. I've been both employed in private industry and municipal government. I've been able to watch budgets managed, and like the first gentleman here today, I'd like to speak in support of the activities that the Box Elder County School District is involved with. I also am retired. I also am on a fixed budget. However, again, I say that I'm vested, and I feel like it's more than necessary to have an educated populace. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate that. Okay, sir.
Payne, up to Tremonton.
Okay.
A question that I have for the board and some of this data that I have is old. It's 4 years old, so it might not be up to current pace. I'd like to know, and probably the residents here would like to know, out of our property taxes, what % stays within the county? That being said, according to the National Association of Counties, Utah and Box Elder County, 20% of our property taxes stay within this county. It would be interesting to know where the rest of it goes. I think it's important to know that every state within the union has what's referred to as a property tax limit. Most states restrict counties' ability to raise the rate of property taxes. Restrictions on these counties' authority to set property taxes, these rates affect 35 states in our union. In 7 of these 35 states, Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, New Hampshire, Oregon, Vermont, and Wyoming, those counties cannot exceed these statutory property tax rates under any circumstances. They're set. In the 17 states with statutory tax rate limits, they allow the caps to be exceeded only by voter approval. Seems like we don't ever get a shot at anything like that. In 4 other states, Iowa, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina, the counties may exceed the property tax rate limit by a board resolution, and that's it. Now this is important. California, Utah, Texas, and New Mexico are the only 4 states in the union that you can exceed these limits whenever you want. And that's why we're here again this year. How many times in the last 3 years? Some of these people have been saying, when hard times hit, we have to budget within our families. It's time that we take a look. If we have to cut some services, we got to cut some services. But you can't keep nickel and diming people to death. This federal government's killing us. And it's hurting you guys too. Yeah, I know it is. It affects all of us. So, you know what? We're just asking you people to take this into consideration. It's important. When does it stop? That's the thing. It seems like when the ball starts rolling, it just keeps on going and going and going. It's got to stop sometime, guys. Figure out a way to make a budget, stay by the budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Are there any others that would like to give comments? No one? Okay. Okay, we need to then have a motion and a second to go out of our truth and taxation hearing and a vote.
I'll move we go out of our truth and taxation meeting.
Okay? Karen, okay. Julie Taylor has made the motion and Karen Cronin the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So now we're back in our regular board meeting. And yeah, right, okay. So now we go back to the financial report, okay? Dave Roberts, Business Administrator, will do our financial report at this time.
Okay, getting there. Right, so you have the finance report in front of you. Basically, starting in the month of July, we don't receive a lot of our revenue or any other revenue from the state because our students are not in school. So the calculations, the reimbursements and all that do not come in play. But as you can tell, we are very similar to what we received in August or July of last year. The amounts that we received from the state from our WPU is relatively similar to what we received. The only item that I highlighted for you that was kind of stood out was we did post the amount of the sale of Mountain View Elementary School, and that's in green on line 137. So you can see that item there in other has already put that revenue category in a very high positive number. But again, we anticipate that money will be used for capital expenses in the future for schools. So any questions regarding the budget? And of course, just so you're aware, that will be adjusted after we get done with truth and taxation. So next month, it will look a little bit different. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Any questions for Dave? Okay, thank you, Dave.
You're
Appreciate that. Thank you. So now we will go, we've done our board committee reports, we'll go on to our action items. And Heidi Jo West, our Assistant Superintendent, is going to go the approval of Lexia Core 5 as early intervention software.
President Hyde,
Yes.
I have a question. Could we do the F3, the approval of tax rates, so that the people that have come can hear that?
We can do that.
Would you be okay with that, Heidi?
Okay, we're good with that. So we will go down. That's our next item anyway, so we're good. We'll do our truth and taxation. Well, we've had our hearings, so we'll do the approval of tax rates. And the presenter is Dave Roberts, our business administrator on that.
So as you guys know, as we look at the budget, we've had some very sharp increases in fuel costs, in utility costs, and those kind of things. Just want to make note that none of the tax increase that we're proposing tonight applies to any wages to any of our employees. It's all applying to, garbage can liners, natural gas, new buses, those kind of things that have risen through inflation. So also to note that the overall total levy is actually decreasing. So with the drop in the voted and the drop in the basic, recapturing the rate in our board and capital levy, even at those, keeping them flat, which means we're keeping them at the same rate going into this year. That was the rate last year. We still are dropping triple 3.64. So we're actually, our total rate is less than last year. The reason that we can do that and get more money is not because of the tax rate increase, because that's staying flat. It's because the assessed valuation of homes have gone up. So, that percentage calculated on a house that's worth more gives us more revenue. Okay? And we, just so it's clear, our tax rate has decreased every year since 2020. It has gone down. I got the numbers here if you would like me to present those to you, but our total tax rate has gone down every year since 2020. So even when you've approved a flat rate or a recapture rate, the total tax rate is less than the previous year. And so, any other questions in regards to the recommendation? Karen?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When they spoke to the fact, I don't know if it's fact, when they spoke to the point that the tax rate for the district has increased 239% since 2000, is that, I'd never heard that before, so that would, I'd like information on that, and also, since 2012, if the overall inflation rate's been 33%, but the district has gone up 53%, that would be something else I'd like to get information on. If those two things, like I said, I don't know if they're fact or whatever, but if they are facts, that would be very concerning to me.
So I don't want to discourage anything in regards to that, but gathering that kind of information from 2012 to today would be very time consuming. Let me just give you what the rates, the total tax rates were and what we collected since 2020. So our total tax rate in 2020 was 006974. We collected $26,891,000. In 2021, that dropped to 006842, and we collected $28,316,000. That dropped again in 2022 to 006169, and we collected $29,543,000. Okay, so if we keep our rate flat, recapture those two levies, just the board and the local, we are anticipating a $32,224,000 revenue, which is $3 million more than last year. Okay, on that. So most of the change, if the tax rates go down, you understand if the tax rates go down and the valuation goes up, the increase in revenue is all coming from new growth, because if the percentage that you're paying on your home is less, then that means any increase in our total revenue is either coming from new growth or because the valuations of the home have gone up. Okay, so our rates we have not increased our taxes, if you want to look at it from that perspective. The values of the homes have gone up, so that's where the increase amount comes in, is because of the valuation. Even with the change and the decrease in the tax rate going down, it's because the valuations go up that causes the additional revenue as well as the new growth. But as you can see, very minimal in my perspective, based off the total valuation of the county, which is $7 billion, to increase $1 million a year is not a huge amount of money in our overall budget or in the overall amount of property tax collected in the county. But again, I'm not trying to minimize the comments that were made, but our costs have gone up, and we can't continue to educate our children when we're receiving only $1 million more a year, but our gas bill went up $400,000 and our fuel bill went up $500,000. That sucks up the $1 million increase right there. And that doesn't include garbage can liners. That doesn't include latex gloves. It doesn't include lubricants for buses and cars. It doesn't include new tires on cars. It doesn't include any of those cost increases. So that's why I think we need to do it, is because our costs are to a point where we need to be able to pay for the increased costs on our utilities and supplies.
Mr. President?
Yes.
So it's been years ago that we voted and set a tax rate in this county. It's been 10 years that we set the rate. And the way the state works, property taxes drift down every year, what we can bring in. So the truth in taxation just allows us to recapture the inflation that's out there and just up what we're doing. We're still not up to what the voters of this county said we could legally charge people. And we've had that discussion. We have consistently stayed below what the voters overwhelmingly approved years ago. And we've been excellent money managers, and as two of our gentlemen have said, we do tremendous things in this county. But we've got a lot of kids, and everybody else, as they said, all the increases and all the inflation that everybody's dealing with, we've got it too. We have stayed below what the voted levy was in this district. So we are simply bumping this up to recapture the inflation, and the state legislature designed this so that entities like us could do that without technically raising your taxes. It sounds like it is, but all we're doing is putting it back up to help catch that inflation, but we're still below what the voters of the county approved years ago. And I need to look that up when that election was. That's been a long, long time ago. Am I correct? Is that?
Yes. Yeah, the voted levy, which is what goes out to the constituents, the taxpayers in our county, yeah, they voted at a certain rate, and we are well below that.
And we have been since it was passed. We've been very conservative.
Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment. That is, I agree with the people that have spoke tonight that I think they said, an educated populace is a benefit and is the future. And so I am very pro-education. And that's, I guess, why I'm here, trying to serve my community. I don't have a deaf ear on those that have voiced concern. So I do ask that we go back and we do a very thorough investigation of the two points that were brought up. So that I just want to know if they are true or not. It may be difficult, but when we're taking money out of people's pockets, that's difficult too.
Well, if I could just do a brief,
I
what
would
I
just-
think I have in my mind is.
Well, you can, but I do want the research to go with it
Okay.
at a later point.
Well, my thought is if you took your taxes in 2000, probably in the state of Utah, your house would have been worth maybe $100,000. So you took your tax at that time, and whatever it was, it would probably $200 or $300, $400, $500. Now, 23 years later, that same house is worth $500,000. So if you did the simple math and did it that way, it's easy to see that your taxes would have increased that much, but the value of your home also increased that much. And so I think we need to know the formula of what that gentleman had prior to being able to answer that question, how he came up with those numbers.
And I'm good with that. And if that's what it comes out to, I'm just trying to
Okay,
get to
yeah.
what the
Sure.
thing is. And
we
I'm
can
sure
probably-
we can
yeah.
get
Well,
with him.
Superintendent, I'm wondering if we could contact that gentleman and just see how he did his formula.
Well, I think
how it
what we
came
can
about.
do is find out what the median cost of a home was in 2000, if they kept
I
that,
see.
and then see what the tax rate was, compare that to now.
To now.
And I think you'd see that the actual amount of the taxes went up probably that much. But if your house cost $100,000 in 2000 and it's $500,000 now, is that a 500% increase in the value of your home? So therefore, the cost of your taxes is going to go up 500% as well.
I think if that's what we come out to,
Yeah.
I think that's just an answer that we can give. So that we would be able to explain
I
that.
happen to
And
have bought a house in
and I think-
1998.
I think there were two gentlemen, by the way, that had, so if you could get with both of them and get their information.
I was just gonna say, I bought a house in 1998, and it was 107,000. And in 2020, I sold it for 330, right before the pandemic hit. And now that house, like you said, all the property values in the last 3 years have just went crazy. So just a simple math from 2000 to 2020 went up. Yeah, up to 330,000.
Okay, thank you all for your comments. I would like everyone to know, we as a board take this very seriously. We have a lot of discussion on this, and I want you to know this is something we do not take lightly. But we do appreciate your input and your comments tonight. So we will go ahead then with our approval of tax rates. That's an action item, so we need a motion and a second on that.
So, Mr. President, just for clarification, I know that Karen has asked for additional information, but we have to vote on this tonight in order for this to go forth.
We do.
And I think we have good data. I think we've got county-approved data, we've got state-approved data, we've got our business administrator that's doing it. And while I appreciate that there's a desire to go into some of these numbers, I tend to trust those that come from legitimate sources. Right? But we do have to vote on this tonight.
I was not asking for a delay of vote, I was just asking for information so that I can make sure that I'm representing the people that have asked me to represent them.
Okay. Okay, and we need a motion and a second, please.
I make the motion to approve the tax rate above the certified rate as presented for the 2023-24 fiscal year budget that was approved on June 14th in the budget hearing on a total tax rate of 0.005805.
I'll second that motion.
Tiffany Summers has made the motion, and Connie Archibald the second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Question, can I see that sheet, please? The one next to Connie? Help remind me of the two gentlemen that had those numbers.
And Jeff Dinsdale?
It's in- Okay. Heidi Joe has it. Okay, so we're good. Okay, very good.
Okay. Okay. Okay, now we will go to our action items. F1, approval of Lexia Core 5 as early intervention software, and then Heidi Jo.
Okay, so for more years than I've been in the district, the state has provided an early intervention software program. And typically the way that that has been run is they just send out to my position and say, go ahead and ask your administrators which software program they're electing to use to help support literacy intervention in the buildings. And that's kind of how it's always gone. Over the years, we've used multiple programs, Imagine Learning, Lexia, some others that I don't recall. In recent years, it's been predominantly those two. Last year, I believe all of the elementary schools elected to use Lexia. This year, the state put out that they want the districts to control that. And in order to do that, and because they're allocating such a significant amount of money towards purchasing that program, we needed to follow our district policies to go out for RFP. So we went out for RFP and had those companies that were interested in being considered submit for approval and review. And in the end, we had administrators and coaches who looked at it, because this isn't necessarily something that gets looked at the teacher level. The coaches would be over the literacy intervention programs. Subsequent to the RFP, the coaches determined, and the process brought out that Lexia Core 5 would be our new program. We have the funds that come to cover that. It won't cost us anything extra. The staff implications are that the coaches will again continue to administer that as they always have done and be engaged in that process. It will just unify us as a district in which software program that we're using, and that the state will no longer manage that contract for us. We'll manage it ourselves. And one of the things that they require is that the board give their approval for that. So that's my recommendation, is that the Box Elder School District Board of Education approve Lexia Core 5 as Box Elder School District's early intervention software.
Any questions for Heidi Jo? Okay.
President, I will make a motion this evening that we approve the Lexia Core 5 as our early intervention software.
I'll second.
Okay. Connie Archibald has made the motion, and Danielle Wright the second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, we'll go on to our consent items. Any questions on those?
Make a motion, we approve our consent items?
Okay, Karen Cronin has made the motion. Do we have a second? Okay, Nancy Kennedy, the second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we'll go to suggestions for future board meetings. I just have one. I was wondering, in our discussion before board meeting tonight, we wanted to have a work session in October after we get the October numbers. And usually, it's easier to have them on Wednesdays because that's when we have board meetings. And I didn't know if it would be better to have it, and Keith, I didn't know, could you have the numbers either by, our board meeting is on the 11th. I thought we could have a meeting on the 11th. Oh, we changed it to the 18th? Oh, to the 18th, okay. Okay, so I was wondering if we should have a work session on October 4th. What do you think? Is that crazy? Or should we just do it on the 18th?
Well, if we're just going to talk about, in a work session, about the numbers, then we can do it. But if we're going to have a discussion like we had tonight, it's really hard to stick that in an hour.
Well,
Or 45 minutes.
right, that's what I was wondering. No, I would think this
We
would
can
be
just have, we can
like
just
to have
have that
a,
in a board meeting.
right, but I'm thinking of like, we probably need a couple-hour meeting.
Yeah.
Is what I would think, at least.
So you'll have an additional meeting on.
An additional meeting, but I thought if we had it on board meeting day, then we could just combine them, and if not, we could do it like on October 4th, if Keith could have the numbers by then. Oh, Mark, that's true. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay.
Sure Mark has them ready.
On the
No,
4th?
seriously.
Okay. Is the
It'll be good.
4th?
Yeah. Like I said, it might not be totally firm, but it's gonna be,
It's darn
it's
close.
gonna be within just a couple.
Okay. So would October 4th work for everyone? If we did it like, say, what would be a good time that would be best for everyone? Late afternoon? We could do it we could do it like 6:30 to 8:30 or something like that, or would you like a little earlier, a little later? 6:30, okay? 6, okay? Is that okay? Okay. So let's shoot for October 4th at 6, and we'll try to keep it around, well, we'll say 2 hours. How's that? Fair enough? And that's be discussing the items that we talked about earlier tonight. Is that okay, Superintendent? We're good? Okay. Okay. Any other items there on future board meetings? We need to be
If we
aware of?
could maybe have some of that information we just talked about with the taxation, either,
In the board meeting, or just have it sent to you?
I think it would be good to have a discussion so that we all would be able to represent that.
So in a future board meeting, what
Yeah.
you're saying, Karen? Okay, okay.
October, what did you say it was, 17th, 18th?
18. But we could even, I don't know if you can have it as early as, well,
Well,
as the September meeting.
Well, oh, yeah, that's right, September, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm off a month.
So,
Sorry, I am off
that's
a
what I
month.
wondered. If we could just
Yes,
do
I
it in the
don't know why,
September
but
meeting.
we had October going, okay.
Yeah,
No
okay,
problem.
okay, okay, so we'll shoot for September, okay, Karen? Is that okay? Rick's good? Okay. Okay, anything's on the board handbook or anything? We're good? Okay, just to remind everyone, we didn't have, like, what do we call it? Like, we usually do a book and those kind of things. We're waiting, I've talked to Heidi Jo, and we thought, we get through the summer and get school started in August and September, then we'll begin that in our October board meeting of what we had talked about before, okay? And we're going to try to tie that into the board handbook because we need to kind of review that every year or so anyway. So we're going to try to do some fun things to do that for at least till the end of the year, and then we'll go from there, okay? Okay.
I have just a little
Yes.
information for you, Julie. The new Box Elder High student rep is Alyssa Lyman. Parents are Josh and Carol Lee Lyman. Josh is a Brigham City police officer, formerly an SRO at Box Elder Middle School. But Alyssa's a great gal.
Okay, are there any other items?
Oh, I
Make
have
a
one.
motion
Well, let me add one other
to
thing quickly. I know Karen's got to go.
adjourn.
But back to Bridgerland, and I should have said this. So Fertig, when he mentioned SRO from up in Tree-Mountain, was one of the outstanding students in his department in pharmacology. He was awarded the Presidential Scholarship, and he's one of our Bear River graduates that got the certificate. And he's gotten, and his dad was the SRO, I think at both Box Elder and then up at Tree-Mountain.
Actually, his father was the chief of police.
Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, his mom was there, and I said, oh, I know your dad. Anyway, so he's one of the, trying to remember what they called him. Anyway, a really distinguished scholar and got a really nice medal at graduation.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And Karen, we understand your daughter is getting married tomorrow, so best of everything on all of that fun adventure. Okay? Okay. Okay. Okay, so Karen has made the motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Okay, Tiffany Summers has made the second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're officially adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, citizens, for your
Yes, thank you so
amazing
much.
comments tonight.
Thank you.
So grateful for your love of education. It's so important, and it really is the future.
If you don't know, Bob runs the light and sound board at Box Elder High School for the productions. He's worked for years at the conference center.
Yes,
And he is
for the
amazing.
church.
And so when he says he's retired, it's not true. I'm still on the first day.
Is this one just the one?
Yeah, but I was scribbling.
That's okay.
I was scribbling.
For free to your house. What's a vampire? Do you still do that? I cannot, because when I move, he stops your porch does not.